Dusty squinted, the harsh desert sun reflecting off the dusty main street of Redemption. The town was aptly named, though whether it had ever truly achieved redemption was another matter entirely. Empty buildings lined the street, their windows like vacant eyes staring out at a forgotten world. A tumbleweed danced lazily across his path, a silent greeting from the desolate landscape. Redemption was a place where whispers of past banditry lingered in the air, a place where the ghosts of outlaws and lawmen alike still roamed. It was a town that time had seemingly forgotten, a place where hope had withered and died. Dusty wasn't looking for hope, though. He was looking for solitude, a place to escape the memories that haunted him. He adjusted the brim of his hat, the leather creaking softly in the stillness. The only sound was the gentle whistle of the wind and the distant caw of a crow. He'd heard tales of Redemption's quiet emptiness, a stark contrast to the bustling cities he'd left behind. This was a place to disappear, to become just another shadow in a town full of them. He pulled his worn saddlebags from his horse and started toward the only sign of life, the flickering light emanating from the saloon at the end of the street. A stiff drink was calling his name, a temporary balm for a soul weary of wandering. He hoped Redemption would offer him that, at least. A moment's peace. The saloon was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of stale beer and sawdust. A handful of patrons sat scattered around the room, their faces etched with weariness and resignation. A piano player in the corner tinkled out a mournful tune, adding to the overall atmosphere of melancholy. Dusty found a spot at the far end of the bar, away from the others, and signaled the bartender for a whiskey. He wasn't looking for conversation, just a temporary escape from the silence in his own head. The clinking of glasses and the murmur of voices were preferable to the constant replay of his past. He took a long swig of the whiskey, the burn a welcome distraction. His past was a heavy burden, one he carried with him everywhere he went. A wife, a daughter, gone too soon, victims of a senseless act of violence. He had tried to find justice, but justice was a rare commodity in these parts. Now, he simply drifted, seeking oblivion in the bottom of a bottle and the anonymity of forgotten towns. Redemption was just another stop on his long, aimless journey. He closed his eyes for a moment, the image of his daughter's smiling face flashing before him. He quickly opened them, downing the rest of his whiskey. He needed to forget, even if just for a little while. Suddenly, the saloon doors burst open, and a man stumbled inside, his face pale and streaked with dirt. He clutched his side, blood seeping between his fingers. The piano music screeched to a halt, and all eyes turned to the newcomer. Wagon, outside of town. He gasped, his voice raspy. Abandoned children. The saloon erupted in murmurs. Children? Abandoned? In this desolate wasteland? Dusty remained stoic, nursing his drink, but a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, or maybe a long-dormant sense of responsibility, stirred within him. The bartender, a burly man with a handlebar mustache, rushed to the injured man's side. Easy there, Jed. What are you talking about? Jed struggled to catch his breath. Orphans. I think, the wagon, broken down, near Widow's Creek. He coughed, a fleck of blood landing on the wooden floor. Someone needs to help them. He slumped against the bar, his eyes fluttering closed. The murmurs grew louder, more frantic. No one moved. Fear and suspicion were palpable in the air. Redemption had seen its share of hardship, and the townsfolk were wary of anything that might disrupt their fragile existence. Dusty sighed, the brief respite he'd found shattered. It seemed oblivion would have to wait. Dusty set down his glass, the clink echoing in the sudden silence. He looked around at the faces, a mixture of fear and apathy staring back at him. He knew what they were thinking, not my problem. Let someone else deal with it. But he couldn't shake the image of those children, alone and vulnerable in the harsh wilderness. He sighed again, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. All right, he said, his voice low but firm. I'll go check it out. A collective sigh of relief swept through the saloon. No one argued, no one offered to help. They were content to let Dusty handle it. He wasn't surprised. He'd always been the one to step up, even when he didn't want to. He walked out of the saloon and into the night, the cool air a welcome contrast to the stuffy atmosphere inside. He mounted his horse and turned it towards Widow's Creek, the injured man's words echoing in his head. Abandoned children, he spurred his horse forward, the rhythmic beat of its hooves a steady counterpoint to the turmoil in his heart. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew he couldn't just stand by and do nothing. The ghosts of his past wouldn't allow it. He had to help those children, even if it was the last thing he did. The ride to Widow's Creek was long and arduous, the landscape a blur of scrub brush and jagged rocks under the pale moonlight. The air grew colder as he approached the creek, a chilling wind whispering through the skeletal branches of the trees that lined its banks. He found the wagon just as Jed had described, its wheels broken and embedded in the sandy ground. The horses were gone. He approached cautiously, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver. He peered inside. His heart clenched. A group of children, huddled together for warmth, stared back at him with wide, frightened eyes. They were a motley crew, ranging in age from toddlers to teenagers, their faces grimy and tear-streaked. They wore ragged clothes, and their small bodies trembled with cold and fear. They looked like any other group of lost and abandoned orphans. "Hello," Dusty said gently, his voice softer than he'd used in years. "Are you all right?" A little girl, no older than 5, stepped forward, clutching a tattered doll. "We're hungry," she whispered. "And cold." Dusty felt a surge of protectiveness, a feeling he thought he'd lost forever. He dismounted and climbed into the wagon, offering the children a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe." He wrapped his coat around the little girl, his gaze sweeping over the innocent faces. He had no idea what he was getting himself into, but he knew he couldn't leave them there. The journey back to redemption was slow and difficult. Dusty led his horse, pulling the broken-down wagon with the children huddled inside. The sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the landscape as they approached the town. As they entered Redemption, the townsfolk emerged from their homes and businesses, their faces etched with curiosity and suspicion. They eyed the children with a mixture of pity and distrust. Dusty could feel their apprehension, their unspoken fears. These people had seen too much violence, too much loss. They were wary of anything that might upset the delicate balance of their lives. "What are you doing, Dusty?" the bartender, Hank, called out, his voice laced with concern. "You can't bring them here." "They have nowhere else to go, Hank," Dusty replied, his voice firm. "They're just children." "Children of what?" a woman shouted from the crowd. "We don't need any trouble here. Not after everything we've been through." Dusty knew their fears were justified. Redemption had been a haven for outlaws in the past, a place where violence and lawlessness reigned supreme. The town had fought hard to overcome its dark history, and they were determined to protect their hard-won peace. But Dusty couldn't turn his back on these children. He had to convince them that they deserved a chance. "They're just kids," he repeated. "They need our help." The looks on the children's faces said it all: fear, uncertainty, and a glimmer of hope that someone, finally, would care. The townsfolk, though hesitant, eventually agreed to let the children stay, at least temporarily. Dusty managed to secure them lodging in the old schoolhouse, which had been abandoned for years. He and a few of the kinder townsfolk, Hank the bartender, and Martha, the baker, brought them food and blankets. As Dusty began to care for the children, he started noticing things that seemed unusual. Little Billy, no more than 6 years old, could deal cards like a seasoned gambler, his tiny hands moving with surprising dexterity. Sarah, the quiet girl who always clutched her doll, could pick locks with a hairpin in seconds, a skill she demonstrated while playing with the schoolhouse door. And then there was young Tom, who seemed to know more about firearms than any child should. He could identify different types of rifles and pistols with ease, and even knew how to disassemble and reassemble them. Dusty tried to dismiss it as children being children, but the skills were too precise, too ingrained. These weren't just innocent orphans, they possessed knowledge and abilities that were unsettling. He watched them closely, a growing unease settling in his stomach. He started to wonder about their past, about where they had come from, and about who their parents were. The sweet, innocent faces started to look a little less innocent. Something was definitely not right. The next day, a stranger rode into Redemption. She was a woman, weathered and tough, with a long, dark braid and eyes that seemed to see right through you. A prominent scar bisected her left cheek, a permanent reminder of a past conflict. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't ask for directions, didn't even seem to acknowledge the presence of the townsfolk. She simply sat on her horse, observing. Dusty noticed her immediately. He felt her gaze on him, on the schoolhouse, on the children playing in the dusty yard. She was like a hawk circling its prey, patient and watchful. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was connected to the children somehow, that she knew something he didn't. He tried to approach her, to ask her who she was and what she wanted, but she always managed to evade him, disappearing around corners or melting back into the shadows. She was a ghost, a phantom, always present but never tangible. Her presence added another layer of unease to the already tense atmosphere in Redemption. Dusty knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that trouble was brewing. The scarred woman was a harbinger of something dark, something dangerous, something that threatened to shatter the fragile peace he was trying to build in this forgotten town. The tension in Redemption ratcheted up another notch the following morning. A rider, breathless and panicked, arrived with news of a stagecoach robbery just outside of town. He claimed the bandits had made off with a large sum of money and several valuable items. "It was the rattlesnakes," he exclaimed, his voice trembling. "I saw their brand on one of the horses." The rattlesnakes. The name sent a chill down the spines of the townsfolk. They were a notorious outlaw gang, known for their ruthlessness and their signature calling card, a rattlesnake skin left at every crime scene. They had terrorized the region for years, and their reputation was legendary. Dusty felt a knot forming in his stomach. The timing was too coincidental. The arrival of the scarred woman, the strange skills of the children, and now the return of the rattlesnakes. It was all connected somehow. He looked towards the schoolhouse, a sense of dread washing over him. He had a feeling that the answers he was looking for were closer than he thought, and that they were about to be revealed in the most dangerous way possible. He knew he had to act fast, before Redemption became the rattlesnake's next target. That evening, while the children were settling down for the night, Dusty decided to take a closer look at their belongings. He rummaged through the tattered clothes and worn-out toys, searching for anything that might offer a clue to their past. He picked up Sarah's doll, the one she always clutched so tightly. It was a simple rag doll, its features faded and worn with age. As he examined it, he noticed a small, almost invisible seam along its back. Curiosity piqued, he carefully pulled it open. Inside, hidden beneath the stuffing, he found a folded piece of parchment. He unfolded it, his eyes widening in disbelief. It was a map, intricately drawn and marked with symbols he recognized from local legends. Symbols that pointed to the location of the rattlesnake's hidden hideout. The hideout was marked as Serpent's Gulch, a place whispered about in hushed tones, a place no one dared to venture. Dusty stared at the map, the pieces falling into place. The children, the stagecoach robbery, the rattlesnakes, it was all connected. But how? And why would they have a map to the rattlesnake's hideout hidden inside a child's doll? The question swirled in his mind, even as he knew he was getting closer to the truth. A truth that was likely to be more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. He didn't have long to ponder his discovery. A shadow fell across the doorway of the schoolhouse. It was the scarred woman. She stepped inside, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "I see you found the map," she said, her voice low and raspy. Dusty stood up, his hand instinctively reaching for his revolver. "Who are you?" he demanded. "And what do you want with these children?" The woman smirked. "My name is Raven," she said. "And I'm here to finish what I started." She explained that she was the leader of a rival gang, the Ravens, and that they had been locked in a bitter feud with the rattlesnakes for years. She revealed that a recent clash had decimated both gangs, leaving the rattlesnakes scattered and their children abandoned. "Those children," Raven said, her voice hardening, "are the legacy of the rattlesnakes. They are poison, waiting to spread. I intend to wipe them out, to ensure that the rattlesnakes are never able to rise again." She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on Dusty. "And you, Gunslinger, are standing in my way." The truth was out, and it was far more dangerous than Dusty had ever imagined. He was caught in the middle of a deadly gang war, and the lives of the children, innocent or not, were hanging in the balance. The realization hit Dusty like a punch to the gut. The children, they weren't just orphans. They were the offspring of the Rattlesnake gang members. Abandoned, yes, but not innocent. Their skills, their knowledge, it all made sense now. He looked at Raven, her eyes cold and determined. "So, that's it, then," he said, his voice tight. "You're going to kill them for the sins of their parents?" "They are their parents," Raven retorted. "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. They will grow up to be just like them, spreading violence and chaos wherever they go. I'm stopping the cycle before it begins." Dusty thought of his own daughter, taken too soon by senseless violence. He understood Raven's desire for revenge, for an end to the bloodshed. But he couldn't condone the murder of children, no matter their parentage. "They're still just kids," he said, his hand gripping his revolver tighter. "They deserve a chance to choose their own path." He knew it was a long shot, that these children were likely tainted by their upbringing. But he couldn't bring himself to condemn them without giving them a chance to prove themselves. He looked at the children huddled in the corner, their faces etched with fear and confusion. He knew what he had to do. He had to protect them, even if it meant standing against a ruthless gang leader and the weight of their own bloodline. Raven didn't waste any time. She signaled to her gang, who had been waiting outside the town limits, and they stormed into Redemption, their faces grim and their weapons drawn. The Ravens were a ruthless bunch, hardened by years of fighting and driven by a thirst for revenge. They were determined to wipe out any trace of the Rattlesnakes, and that included their children. The townsfolk, caught off guard, scrambled for cover. Gunfire erupted, shattering windows and sending splinters of wood flying. The quiet emptiness of Redemption was shattered by the sounds of violence, the echoes of its dark past returning with a vengeance. Dusty pushed the children into a back room of the schoolhouse, barricading the door with whatever furniture he could find. He knew it wouldn't hold for long. He grabbed his rifle, his heart pounding in his chest. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and facing a ruthless enemy. But he wasn't about to let those children die. He peered through a crack in the boarded-up window, assessing the situation. The Ravens were systematically moving through the town, searching for the children, their eyes cold and devoid of mercy. It was a battle for survival, a fight for the future of Redemption, and Dusty was right in the middle of it. He took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and prepared to fight. He would protect those children, even if it was the last thing he did. Dusty knew he couldn't face the Ravens alone. He needed help. He kicked open the door of the schoolhouse and sprinted towards the saloon, dodging bullets and leaping over overturned tables. He burst through the saloon doors, his face grim. "They're here," he shouted, his voice hoarse. "The Ravens! They're after the children!" The townsfolk, huddled in fear, looked at him with disbelief. "We can't fight them, Dusty," Hank said, his voice trembling. "They're too many. We have to." Dusty insisted. "They'll kill those children if we don't. This is our town, our home. Are we going to let them destroy it?" He knew it was a risk, asking these people to fight. They had suffered enough. But he also knew that deep down, they were good people, people who cared about justice and about protecting the innocent. He just needed to remind them of that. He looked at their faces, searching for a spark of courage, a flicker of hope. Slowly, hesitantly, they began to rise. Hank grabbed his shotgun from behind the bar. Martha, the baker, picked up a rolling pin. Others grabbed whatever weapons they could find. "All right," Dusty said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Let's show these Ravens what redemption is made of." He knew it was going to be a long and bloody fight, but he was ready. He had to protect those children, and he would do whatever it took to defend his new home. The battle for redemption was fierce and brutal. The townsfolk, armed with whatever they could find, fought bravely against the well-equipped Ravens. Dusty led the charge, his guns blazing, taking down Raven's men with deadly accuracy. Hank, with his shotgun, defended the saloon, turning it into a makeshift fortress. Martha, surprisingly agile, used her rolling pin to disarm several attackers. The Ravens, though initially confident, were taken aback by the townsfolk's resistance. They had expected an easy victory, but they were facing a determined enemy who was fighting for their homes and their lives. The streets of Redemption became a chaotic battleground, filled with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and desperate cries. Buildings were set ablaze, casting long, flickering shadows across the scene. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of gunpowder. Dusty fought his way back to the schoolhouse, determined to protect the children. He knew that Raven would be targeting them directly. He had to get them out of there, to find a safe place to hide until the battle was over. But getting them out of the schoolhouse meant facing the full force of Raven's wrath. He steeled himself, took a deep breath, and prepared to face whatever came his way. The fate of Redemption, and the lives of those children, depended on it. While Dusty was fighting his way back to the schoolhouse, the children were far from helpless. Trapped in the back room, they knew they had to do something to help. Billy, using his nimble fingers, picked the lock on the back door, allowing them to slip out unnoticed. Sarah, remembering her lessons on weaponry, showed the others how to load and fire the old rifles they found stored in a dusty corner of the schoolhouse. Tom, with his encyclopedic knowledge of firearms, directed their aim, helping them to pick off ravens from the windows. The townsfolk were stunned. These weren't just innocent orphans, they were skilled fighters, using their inherited talents to defend their new home. Billy, darting through the streets, distracted the ravens with his card-dealing skills, allowing the townsfolk to gain the upper hand. Sarah, using her lock-picking abilities, freed several townsfolk who had been taken prisoner. Their actions turned the tide of the battle. The ravens, caught off guard by the children's unexpected resistance, began to lose ground. The townsfolk, inspired by the children's courage and resourcefulness, fought with renewed vigor. It was a team effort, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and a powerful reminder that even the most unlikely heroes can rise to the occasion. With the tide of the battle turning, Dusty knew he had to confront Raven. He tracked her down to the town's abandoned church, where she was rallying her remaining forces. He kicked open the church doors, his gun drawn. "It's over, Raven," he said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Your gang is finished." Raven turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of rage and despair. "It's never over," she spat. "The rattlesnakes have to be wiped out. All of them." "Why?" Dusty asked, his voice softer now. "What did they ever do to you?" Raven hesitated, her tough exterior cracking for a moment. She revealed that she had once been a member of the Rattlesnakes, in love with their leader. But he had betrayed her, using her and then casting her aside, leaving her scarred and broken. "He left me for dead," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "And he didn't even care about our child." Dusty realized the truth. Raven's hatred for the rattlesnakes stemmed from a deep personal tragedy, a pain that had consumed her and driven her to seek revenge. The children she wanted to kill were her own half-siblings, victims of the same man who had destroyed her life. The revelation changed everything. A tense standoff ensued, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Raven, consumed by her pain, refused to back down. She lunged at Dusty, a knife flashing in her hand. Dusty, with his years of experience, easily disarmed her, knocking the knife from her grasp. He could have killed her. He had every reason to. She had threatened the children, attacked the town, and brought chaos to Redemption. But he saw the pain in her eyes, the deep-seated wound that had festered for years. He recognized the cycle of violence, the endless chain of revenge that only led to more suffering. He couldn't bring himself to add another link to that chain. He lowered his gun, offering her a chance to surrender. "It doesn't have to end like this, Raven," he said, his voice gentle. "You can choose a different path." Raven hesitated, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. For a moment, it seemed like she might accept his offer. But then, her eyes hardened, and she lunged at him again, unarmed but determined. Dusty was forced to defend himself, knocking her unconscious with the butt of his gun. He had defeated her, but he hadn't killed her. He had chosen mercy over vengeance, breaking the cycle of violence, at least for now. He knew that Raven would likely never forgive him, but he had done what he thought was right. He had given her a chance, and he had given the children a chance, too. In the aftermath of the battle, as the smoke cleared and the wounded were tended to, the children faced a difficult decision. They could leave Redemption, try to find a new life somewhere else, or they could stay and face the town that had so recently feared and distrusted them. Dusty gathered them together, offering them his support and guidance. He didn't pressure them one way or the other. He simply told them the truth, that life in redemption wouldn't be easy, that they would have to work hard to earn the trust of the townsfolk, but that he would be there to help them every step of the way. To everyone's surprise, the children chose to stay. They had found a sense of belonging in redemption, a sense of community that they had never known before. They had fought alongside the townsfolk, defended their home, and proven that they were more than just the offspring of outlaws. They looked at Dusty, their eyes filled with hope and gratitude. They knew that he would be their guide, their mentor, their protector. He would teach them right from wrong, help them to channel their skills for good, and give them the chance to build a new life, free from the shadow of their past. The remaining rattlesnake children wanted redemption. And Dusty was the key. Dusty watched the children, a newfound sense of purpose stirring within him. He had come to redemption seeking solitude, seeking an escape from his past. But he had found something far more valuable, a reason to stay, a reason to fight, a reason to live. He realized that he could no longer drift aimlessly, haunted by the ghosts of his past. He had a responsibility to these children, to guide them, to protect them, to help them become good people. He would teach them everything he knew, share his experiences, and offer them the love and support they had never received. He made his decision. He would stay in redemption. He would become their guardian, their father figure, their friend. He would help them build a new life, a life free from violence and hatred, a life filled with hope and opportunity. He looked out at the town, at the faces of the townsfolk, at the children playing in the dusty streets. He knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But he was ready. He had found his redemption in redemption, a future he never expected, a family he never thought he would have again. He had found a reason to believe in the power of hope, and he was determined to make the most of it. The gunslinger had finally found his true calling, a guardian. Slowly, gradually, redemption began to heal. The bullet holes were patched, the buildings were rebuilt, and the scars of the battle began to fade. But more importantly, the hearts of the townsfolk began to mend. They had seen the children's courage, their willingness to fight for their new home, and they had begun to accept them as part of their community. Dusty worked tirelessly to guide the children, teaching them right from wrong, helping them to channel their skills for good. Billy used his card-dealing skills to run honest games at the saloon, entertaining the townsfolk and earning their respect. Sarah used her lock-picking abilities to help those in need, opening locked doors for the elderly and assisting the sheriff with investigations. Tom, with his knowledge of firearms, became a valuable member of the town's defense, training the townsfolk in the proper use of weapons and helping to keep redemption safe. Redemption, once a town defined by its violent past, was becoming a place of hope and opportunity, a place where everyone, even the children of outlaws, could find a second chance. It was a place where redemption was not just a name, but a way of life. The town began to flourish, attracting new settlers and becoming a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. Dusty had found his peace, the children had found their home, and redemption had finally found its true meaning. The end.